Hey there, welcome to the REI Conversion Podcast, where each episode we discuss strategies and digital tools to help you launch, automate, and scale your real estate investing business. Learn how to run your investing business remotely, find out ways to automate your business to better utilize your time, and learn what other successful investors are implementing so you can get to the next step closer to your investing goals. And I'm your host and founder of REI Conversion, Jesse Kwong. Hey, how's it going? This is Jesse of the REI Conversion Podcast. Today I have a very special guest. His name is Karl and he goes by Uncle Karl. Karl is a very unique land investor. In fact, he looks at properties that most people would shy away from. And I brought him on this episode to really talk about the different things that he would typically look at that most land investors would avoid. Now, he's got a checklist in this episode, so make sure you have a pen and paper ready. We've also got a downloadable for the entire slide, so you can head over to the reiconversion.com/podcast page, find this episode, and then also submit your name and email to grab the downloadable or the slides for this episode, as he points out the entire checklist that he goes through and examples of what he does. Now, as usual, this podcast is brought to you by REI Conversion. If you are looking to systemize and simplify your land investing, make sure you check out REI Pebble. REI Pebble is really a turnkey solution for automating and systemizing and streamlining your entire land investing business, from automating your mailers to generating documents, whether you're generating letters or neighbor letters or contracts or warranty deeds. That can all be done inside of Pebble with just a few clicks. Tracking leads, so making sure that whenever you get a lead through your website or wherever else, or even your call centers that are taking your leads, they can come in and add those leads inside of Pebble and then attach it to a property. Not only that, you'll be able to track your marketing and your sales through Pebble as well. And finally, inside of REI Pebble, you're also able to manage and notify your team members, assigning them tasks or getting them to make sure they complete the task that they need to complete inside of REI Pebble. So go ahead, start your free 14-day trial at www.reiconversion.com/pebble. All right. So I hope you're ready for this episode. Sit back, relax, and I hope you find tons of value from this specific episode here with Karl. Cheers. Karl and I got in touch as one of our creative land investors shared REI Pebble inside of Karl's Mastermind group, and now we have a chance to get to work with Karl and his team on automating some of their land processes as well. Now, when I say creative, Karl, it's hard for me to simply just say, share with us some tips, because, you're doing a lot of unique things. It's not, it is quite unique, but I think you have a system to this kind of craziness that you're doing. Not craziness, but the unique approach that you're taking, a really creative approach that you're taking. So I'm wondering if we can boil it down to some things to look out for, where to get resourceful, where to spend an extra few minutes and look for those, more hidden opportunities that people tend to shy away from that. But before we actually start that, Karl, I want to, first of all, ask you, how did you get started in all of this, and why do you do this?
I got started in land by accident by going after tax delinquents. And the first deal we made $58,000. The second deal we made $68,000, and we've learned a lot of the niche stuff. And we'll go into variances and subdividing and stuff like this. But we just started doing houses, then we got into the tax delinquents, and then we're like, wow. I mean, we made $166,000 on one deal. We made $95,000, and we're like, there's not as much competition. And when you learn these little niche things like this, right, there's not a lot of competition, and there's a ton of money in adding value. So that's how we sort of got into it.
Awesome. And how long have you been doing that now for?
I did it from 2000 to 2008. I lost everything in the downturn and started back about 4.5 years ago doing houses and land.
Got you. And so I kind of came into this podcast thinking, okay, you know what? I'm going to get Karl to share. Let's just share 5 points. But Karl has actually put together a presentation here. So if you are listening right now, you may want to, he'll explain it through the audio as well, but if you want to check out the slides, you can go over to youtube.com/REI Conversion. You'll find that podcast there. And make sure you hit that subscribe button and that bell notification, because a lot of times I go live on Suddenly. We do live Q&As. We do our update roundups and so on and so forth. So you want to get notified of that. Not only that, Karl will also have a downloadable for this. So if you head over to the REI Conversion podcast page and find this episode, because I'm recording this in advance, I don't know which number specific number this episode is. You'll just have to look for it. But there will be a download area to grab this. You'll just fill in your name and email, and you'll be able to grab this download here from Karl. But you know what, Karl, instead of me saying, let's go through the top 5, you've got a list here. You spent the time to put this together. Let's kind of go through this. Typically on these podcasts, I like to keep it short and impactful so that people are listening can get something out of this right away. Let's start with what you got here.
Okay, well, what I'll show you is basically taking like all your land leads and being able to maximize them and make extra money by looking at niche stuff that most people wouldn't think. So one of the first things is you want to look at the zoning, because if it's zoning is really important. Is it zoned industrial? Is it zoned R8? How many units you put on it? So one of the things I teach and I show people is look at your property lookup system to see what the zoning is. That can make it much more valuable. Okay. The next thing is the lot. Once you learn the zoning laws, is it subdividable? For example, in Charlotte, R5 means you have to have 50 foot of frontage. So if you find a lot that has 100 foot of frontage and enough depth, you can subdivide it. I'm going to show you an example of a lot that we bought for 32,000 and we subdivided and sold for 55. A variance. I love these. We only do about one a year. Okay. A variance is for the quick explanations, find maybe a lot that's too small to build on. Right now, the cities are they want people to build. So a variance is taking a lot that's too small to build on and going through the process and getting it buildable. I'll show some great examples of that. Assemblage is just getting a couple, when you see one lot, maybe you can buy a couple more, put them together and subdivide them. Also selling properties with bad topo. I'll show you some deals we bought where there's terrible topo, streams running right through them. I got a couple examples of flood lots. You can make a lot of money in flood lots. Buying lands with judgments and liens. Let's say you get something under contract and comes back with a $10,000 lien. Well, maybe that lien's getting ready to expire, or maybe you can discount the lien. Okay, landlocked lots, and then there's also tree saves. So the first thing I want people to get is that you need to go through this checklist of different things to take a look at before you just go sell it, because you might have some value adds. You might be throwing away something that you can make money on. So I want to go through first. This one is on Walford. I know if you can't see it, basically it's a package, and this lot was like 60 by 60, a very small lot. The lady said, I'll throw it in for the taxes for $500. So let's say you guys are doing your mailers, okay? You're sending mailers out, and you get a little tiny lot. You go, oh, it's not buildable. I'll just throw it away. Before you do that, find a variance attorney, call them, and you might be able to do a variance. This lot on 210 Walford, we bought for $500. And here's the variance. We went through a variance process. We hired an attorney. They go from the city and they move the setbacks out so you can build on it. And then you get the letter of variance, and we sold it for $95,000. We made $84,000 on an initial $500 investment. Okay.
You know what, Karl, I'm actually looking at a property right now that is about 3/4 of an acre, and it's right up against a road. And we're wondering if we're checking if there's, if it's buildable or not. So, this might be something that I might look into. But going through this variance process, what is that like? You talk about hiring an attorney. I'm sure you're going to have to look to see if there's enough meat on the bones here. But what's that process like?
It's real simple. There's different kinds of variance. The ones that we do is finding a lot that's too small. You have to find an attorney that specializes in variances, probably rezoning variances. You call them up, and then you have to get a survey, and then he goes in front of the city. There's a special committee for variances, and he writes up all the legal stuff and why it should be done. You basically write him a check, and he does all the work. That's the simple thing of it, okay? And all you have to do is, again, this is one thing I teach all the time. You don't have to be smart. You just have to find an expert. So you find an expert on it, and you say, hey, can I get a variance on it? And then they'll tell you if you can or not. So stop throwing away all these little lots. I'm not saying you can do it all the places, but think about it. These lots that aren't buildable, she threw it in for $500, $84,000 profit.
And how much is it to bring on someone to help you with that, an attorney to help you with the variance?
Well, I just wrote him a check. It was like $3,000 plus a survey. So that's all we did. We just ordered the survey and wrote the check. And then we showed up in front of the variance thing and nobody said anything. So we got it passed. That simple, you know? So, you know, and then, you know, I want to show you guys another thing too. Here's another thing. This is some Uncle Karl math here. It's 1 + 1 divided by 3 = 4. We found this one lot, then we realized there was another lot next to it that made it in. So you guys that are listening won't be able to see this, but we bought the lot next. So we bought one lot for 68,000. We bought the next lot for 168. So we bought the two, we combined them and then subdivided them facing the other way. And we got 4 lots out of it. So one of the things I want to show you guys is, like, let's say you get a lot, look on either side of it to see if you can get another lot. Then all we did is, okay, again, you don't have to be smart. One of the things I want you to get out of this, you don't have to be smart to do this. We called the zoning people and said, can we do this? And they said, yes. Then we called the surveyor and said, yes, you can. That was that simple. So another thing, when you're buying a lot, look to see if there's any lots on the other side. Can you combine them? Like I'll give you another example of one where here's one that we're working on right now. Like there's one here at 75 feet, this other lot's 75 feet. We combine the two, we get 150 frontage, divide that by 3 is 50 feet. So we can buy 2 lots and make them into 3. So that's just another example of stuff that you can do. So you always want to be looking for these value adds, things that other people don't think, oh, let me just wholesale this off. What else can you do to add value? Okay.
Now, how do you actually spot something that you know you can add value? Like, you know, with us typical land investors, you know, we're just going to, you know, try to get to that and offload it as quickly as possible. What sort of signs should we look for to know that, hey, we should go through a checklist of this and figure out if we can do something creative on here? Because our mindset is typically buy it, flip it.
Yeah, you got to get away from it. You got to have, like, I'll make a nice webinar and we can talk about just basically, you just got to look at like this stuff. You got to learn what to look for. You know, you got to learn to look for whenever you get it, look on, like, again, look on to see if there's extra lots. Look if it's a small lot. Look if it's a double lot. You got to learn the zoning stuff. So once you learn about the zoning stuff, you can probably spend 10 minutes per deal to find out if there's a value added play on it. Does that make sense? By just going through this checklist, you know,
right.
Is it subdividable? Can I buy the lot next door? And I'll go through some other stuff. So once I get through with this, you'll be able to use this list and spend sometimes 5 minutes to see if there's a value add. Will there be a value added? Maybe 5% or less of the time, but still, if you can hit $100,000 home run once a year, and then maybe another 50,000, like this one here, where we bought the 2 lots and then combined them and re-subdivide them, we made $166,000 on that one deal. And then here's another variance. We bought it for 23,000. Did the variance? We sold it for 160. That's another example. This one I won't go into, but I'll talk a little bit about this too. Sometimes you're going to get stuff with judgments and liens on them. They're going to call you up for whatever reason. Don't walk away. This is a property in 3101 Florida. It had a first mortgage from IRA, a second mortgage, multiple liens and judgments. This gets sort of complicated, and I won't go into it. We used we rented somebody's judgment, foreclosed. We worked a deal with the first mortgage for a discount, a release on the second mortgage, and discounts on all the liens, and we made $75,000 on that deal. So that's the thing you can. So like, whenever there's a problem, there's probably a good solution. Most people would have walked away from this. Okay. We actually had 5 attorneys that said it couldn't be done. And we said, yo, mofos, we can get it done. And to be honest, I wouldn't do this deal again. It was too much work, but I want people to know that you can do that. And then there's another example too. We have a way, like if you get a lot, sometimes the house has been demoed on it. Okay. Now there's still a mortgage on it. So far, we're 100% on getting that mortgage wiped off. We have a way of doing that. Okay. So reach out to me that. So there's just, there's ways to get rid of these liens. There's ways to buy the liens. There's way to wait. Now liens are only good for judgments, only good for 10 years. And if they don't renew them, they go away. So we buy properties all the time with demo liens and let them expire. So that's another key is look for, when you get the title work back, if there's judgments and liens, You might, and let's say they want 50,000 for the property and there's 45,000 in judgments. Maybe you give them 5,000 and you can either wait the judgments out, discount them, or buy them. Just know that that's another way you can add value. Okay. So here's another one. This lot, what's a lot here? We bought it for 20 and we subdivided into 3 pieces and sold it for 67. So you're always looking, again, all I did is I saw the lot. Then I called zoning. I drew some lines. Can I do this? They said yes. So we bought it, subdivided, and resold it.
Now, when, like, for example, a property like this, now this is out of experience, and most people wouldn't have that experience that you have. But when they're looking at a lot like this, are you saying to yourselves, hey, you know what? This looks big enough to be subdivided into, 3 different lots or whatever. Is that sort of the initial thought that runs through your mind, and then you sort of start digging from there?
Yep. Yeah, you can just sort of look at it and go, hey, I think I can subdivide it. And then you have to look at the zoning. This was R5, so it needed 50 foot of frontage. So you can see I just drew the lines. And then so the first thing is, yeah, it looks like it can be subdividable. Then we just called the zoning. Then we called our surveyor. He said, yep, it can be. And then we just said, okay, we'll buy it for 20,000. Now, another thing, if you didn't want to go through the process of subdividing it, you could have had an architect or I mean, the zoning, not the zoning person, the surveyor draw some lines, a quick sketch, and maybe instead of selling it for 67, I could have sold it to someone and say, look, it's subdividable, and let them go through the process. So it could have been, see, in other words, instead of going through the process, show the builder it's subdividable, and then you maybe instead of getting 67, I might have got 50, but I wouldn't have to take it down and do all the work. So that's another possibility, is to show the builder it's subdividable, and a lot of builders are like, oh, I can do that, fine, okay, you want 50? I'll take it. So this thing could have been wholesaled off without going through the whole process. So that's another little golden nugget.
Sure.
Here.
Yep.
And so another thing too I want to show you guys is, let me see. Here's one we bought with bad topo. Another bad topo is look at the way these lines are very close. It means it's a super steep slope. There's a stream running down the middle of it. Okay. So we went and we paid 3,000 a piece for these lots. We have a Yahoo theory. Our Yahoo theory is you list on the MLS, some Yahoo will buy it. Okay. So we bought them for 3,000 a piece. We list on the MLS and someone paid us 12,500 a piece. So another good key too, we took this down, but here's a great way to sell properties too, is we can list. So like, let's say we put it under contract, we could have listed on MLS as not owned yet. And then that's a good way to wholesale too, because it opens up the entire market. And you can find that Yahoo that might go, oh, that's neat having a stream through my property. You never know. And then here, this is sort of funky here, but this was actually 1 lot. We subdivided into 4, but it's actually going to end up being 2 lots. So here's another example of that. So this is an example of just because it has bad topo doesn't mean it's going to necessarily be an issue to build on. And then here's another thing that I want people. This is another one where we bought for 15,000. Okay, this lot across the street just sold for 360. Okay, now this had judgments and liens. It had a 90,000 Ford Motor Credit lien, a 70,000 HD lien, and 25,000 in taxes. And it had a lien IRS that just expired. So we paid the owner 15,000. We said, we'll take on all the problems. We just bought the HD lien for $16,000. Okay. So it was 70. We bought it for 16. Now, another thing is the Ford Motor Credit lien is only good for 3 more years, then it falls off. So we can either wait or we can get a thing. We have an offer on this for $255,000. We signed the contract today. If we close this out and we do not get the discount from Ford Motor Credit, we'll still make $100,000 on this deal. So this is a thing, is when you find these things with these problems, I look them as possibilities. And that's another thing that I want you guys to get is we'll do these things that everyone, oh, wait, it's got these liens. Screw that. I've got 15,000 invested right now in this deal, and we should make 100,000. Now things go wrong. And another cool thing is when we close out with attorneys. We got title insurance subject to those 3 liens. So that means the title's good. We own it. We just have to work on those 3 liens. So that's another cool thing that we do. Now, here's a landlocked lot. A lot of times people are like, why would you buy a landlocked lot? Well, there's a thing that's over 2 acres, you can actually sue and get a right of way. Or if you go back and sometimes there's actually easements on here. I'm trying to find this one. I missed it up. But there's actually an easement on here. Trying to find it. I can't find it. But just know that we were able to go back and find the easement into the lot. So we bought this lot for $9,000, knowing that there's easement into the property. So that's another thing. People, oh, you would landlocked lot? Plus, you might be able to sell it to the neighbors. There's always multiple exit strategies. I know I'm going over a lot of stuff fast, but so when you find something like this, if you guys can see it, I could probably sold it to these guys, maybe to these guys, or buy into this property here. So the whole point is that there's so much cool different stuff that you can do. And then I want to show you another thing. Here's another thing. We talked about the selling to the neighbors. Okay. Yep. Another exit strategy. We remember the podcast you guys were on. You're talking about how you mail out the neighbors.
Yeah.
So here's a lot we have under contract for $6,500. Now take a look at this topo. It drops off like a cliff. Okay. So I drove down here just to look at it. While I was here, this neighbor came out and goes, "Hey, what are you doing?" I'm like, "Hey, we're going to be selling this. Someone's going to build a house." She goes, "Oh no, I want to buy it." And then this other neighbor came out. I'm not making this up. And she goes, "Oh, I want to buy it. We rent this house." So I got the two neighbors bidding against each other for it. So that's another thing. Whenever you get property, always reach out to the neighbors because you might be able to sell the neighbor. I got lucky. I was just driving down to take a look at it. And they're like, "Hey, what are you doing walking around our property?" And so this will be an interesting thing to see. So this is just some of the, and then
I'm going to cut you off here. I think a lot of people can. I'm feeling your enthusiasm for this and the passion you have digging into this. Now, what do you have to say to people who want to do this, but aren't confident? Like I'm not that confident about looking into things, and I think maybe is it building the confidence to figure out who to get in touch with? Is that what it is all about? You seem to be quite resourceful, and is that what it boils down to, is figuring out, okay, there can be a certain there can be different kind of creative exit strategies on these properties. Is it sort of building that confidence to reach out and be resourceful and knowing who to talk to about these properties?
It's reach out to zoning, reach out to investors, reach out to attorneys. Like Henry Ford said, he said, like, he wasn't expert, but he had experts around him. He had the best people. So what I did is I've networked in. So I reach out to the variance attorney. I've got to know the zoning people. I reach out to them. I have other investors that we sit and mastermind with and stuff like that. So that's how you learn the stuff. And another thing too, I'm going to knock education. You can go to school for 4 years, run up $120,000 thing, learning all sorts of stuff, come out broke, or you can spend a little bit of time learning this stuff. This is easier than go to school for 4 years and start making money right away. So reaching out to the different experts and then just diving in, clicking, like, this is our GIS system. Okay, learning the layers, learning how it works. Spend some time just playing around with the stuff. Oh, this is like the one I'm showing you now. It's a property in a flood zone.
Let me ask you this, Karl. You must be working in the areas and you're getting very familiar with the areas. You must be getting familiar with the zoning people. And does this come down to saying, hey, stick to one county or stick to a couple counties that you can really work and get to know, so you start building confidence in figuring these kind of creative methods out?
I think it's good. Like, I would work in a really big area, and because, like, think about it, once you learn the zoning, it's good for the whole county. So I would work on areas that are growing like crazy, and big, and I would dive down and I would learn. But I still think within a little bit of time, you can reach out and do it all over the country. Okay. But I do think concentrate on one area, really get to know it, but then you can extrapolate most of that to another county. So I would say take one area, learn it, because once you learn stuff like this is a perfect example. See this property here? We paid $1,500 for each of these lots because they're in a flood zone. I know I've done my research. It's a pain in the butt, but for about 20,000 per lot, I can get them taken out of the flood zone. Okay. So these lots are worth 60,000 a piece once they're out of the flood zone. So we'll be into them for like 23,000 a piece. We'll take them out of the flood zone. So that's another value add by doing research, reaching out to civil engineers, stuff like that. So now we look for, like, if you take a look at this one here, there's 2 stages of the flood. This one with all the lines in it, it's much harder. This one here, it's a little bit easier to take it out of. So it's just like, no, what we did, we called the city of Charlotte and said, who's in charge of the flood zones? And who was her name? Melanie Brock is her name. We called Melanie. Can you do a webinar, a 45-minute thing? She said, okay. So she did the thing and gave us all the stuff on what we have to do to get it out of that. And then we reverse engineered it. We found another lot that was done. We called the guy up that did it. And then he told us his engineer person to use. So we can just basically write a check now and say, do whatever it does, get it out of the flood zone. So that's how you become so smart, is asking questions and relying on the experts. So again, you don't have to be smart to do this. All you got to do is just reach out to the city, reach out to the experts, and write checks.
Yeah. And Karl, again, coming back to a lot of this, again, getting creative has to do with your confidence level. So a lot of people are thinking, okay, risks. How does one, where can they start? Where, what can they do to sort of minimize the risk? And a lot of stuff, you've done over experience and gained that confidence. If they're going to approach and do something on their own, what should they do? How can they sort of minimize that risk when they're doing something like this?
I think if you're wholesaling it off, you want one thing, like when you're buying something, you got to look for easements. I bought one property, had 3 easements running to the back of it. Luckily, it didn't affect the value much. So when you take something down, like the lots, you got to be a little more careful that you could possibly make a mistake and lose money. So I would say confidence, if you're wholesaling off, the risk is low. Does that make sense? So if you're not sure, like, learn the stuff and just wholesale to the builders, wholesale. That way you're not taking the risk, and then just dive in and learn. It didn't take me very long to learn all this stuff. So I think then this is our property lookup system here, and it has tutorials, quick tips. It's all here. You can learn it by just pulling up your GIS system and learning it. I have an attorney. It charges me $300 an hour. He does variance and stuff like that, and I'll load my questions up, and I'll call him up, and it's okay. Look at this property. Look at this as quick as we can. Right. So I guess the point is sort of just jump in, learn it. Is not that, again, if you can graduate high school, this is not any harder than that. This is not hard. And I'm terrible with contracts. I'll write my contract out, and I'll give it to my attorney. He goes, Karl, you put the seller of the buyers and the buyer of the seller. I'm like, oh man. So again, you don't have to be smart, but so my point is, don't overthink it. Get in and learn the stuff, and then learn this zoning stuff. And actually, you know what the best way is to learn all this stuff? There's a great mastermind called Uncle Karl and Friends Mastermind Group. It's $105 a month. You can join my mastermind. I'll send the link. About 25% of what we do is land, 75% is houses, but we go over some of these deals, and we even do some stuff where we buy out fractional interests.
I both Kevin and I got a chance to be a part of that, join in on one of those calls. And I can tell you, sitting in that call, I know Karl goes deep with everybody in that. Like, it was a long call, and I was like, I gotta. After we finished our presentation, and Kevin left, and then I was like, I gotta get going because I got dinner. And so, Karl, I know you spend a lot of time, and you kind of dig quite deep. I was really sort of blown away with this kind of stuff that you guys are diving into. So we'll leave that in the show notes for
Yeah.
sure, so that people can sort of get a hold of you and work with you. But I want you to sort of go back to the beginning. I just
Okay.
want to go. There was a lot that you showed, and showing all these different examples of what you kind of went through. And this is really it. I mean, on a show like this, the only way that we can really talk about the creativeness is sort of show the examples of the kind of things that you can do and sort of open up our listeners' minds to the different things that they can do. So let's go through this checklist once more. If you got a pen and paper, I want to write these things down. Sort of a mental checklist. Okay, here are the types of things that you should sort of revisit in case you feel like there might be something here. And this is sort of the checklist that you want to go through.
Yeah, and it's basically check at the zoning first, because let's say it's a lot in zone R, like for us, it's zoned multifamily 22. That means 22 units per acre. Okay, so you want to know that, because that can make a huge difference in the sale of it. A lot that's zoned multifamily 22 versus one R3 where you only put 3 per acre, it can be a huge difference. So you want to learn about the zonings anywhere. That's real important. You can probably get it within 2 hours to 3 hours. You can study the zoning stuff and have enough knowledge. It doesn't take that long. Okay. So the first thing is look at the zoning. Second thing, maybe if it's a bigger lot, is it subdividable? Okay. Can you get 2 lots? Can you get 3 lots? So the next thing you want to look is the lot subdividable.
And I'm assuming that anytime you subdivide a lot, you're probably going to make more than just the one lot.
Yes. So like there's one I didn't show where we bought it for 32.5, subdivided, sold it for 55. 32.5 was full value, but we knew we could subdivide it. The guy didn't know. So,
right.
It's going to be subdivided. The next thing, again, if you have one lot, can you buy another lot, put them together, and maybe put them into 4 or put them into 3? It takes a little bit of, again, if you can do a little bit, like if you remember the algebra or triangles geometry, okay? A little bit of geometry time on this. You just got to look and play around it. Well, I got this one lot. Can I buy another lot and then put them together and subdivide them?
And then for subdivisions, you'll work with zoning and a surveyor. Is that correct?
Yep. We work with zoning to find out if we can do it. Occasionally they make mistakes. They've told me sometimes things couldn't be subdivided, and I had to go back and show them, no, it can. But anyways, yeah. So you work with the zoning, and then you have a surveyor be able to survey it off and do that. And then variances. That's like you find a lot and this may be too small to build. Well, couple things. Can you sell it to the neighbor? Okay, maybe they'll want it. Or can you go through this process of a variance and the city will allow you to build on it? So we made 84,000 one variance, 127. And we got another one we're going to get ready to make 80,000 on. And we got a couple others in line. We only do one of those a year, but it's 100,000 average. So you look for those small lots, because then another thing is we talked about selling stuff with bad topo. Like, even though you're like, oh my God, there's a stream running through it, whatever. Well, there's a Yahoo or the neighbor or somebody that will want that lot. Especially you can sell anything if you can finance it. So if you get we bought lots for $250, okay? Well, you might be able to sell it for $10,000 owner finance to somebody, or 3,000 or 4,000. So just because it has bad topo, and then flood lots, depending on how bad they are, you might be able to bring them out of the flood zone. So just because it's in the flood zone, you want to check for that. You might be able to build it out, or there's people that'll buy them in the flood zone to say they own property, or maybe they'll park their boat or RV on it, okay? Another thing is another checklist is when it comes back, seeing if there's any judgments or liens. Don't give up. They may be expired. You may have to wait them out. You may be able to buy them. You may be able to discount them. So just because there's a judgment and lien, don't throw the property away. Landlocked locks. Another thing I didn't talk about too is tree saves. If you have a big piece of property, okay, or let's just say it's an acre or 2 acres, maybe it's zoned R5, okay, which R5 means you have to 50 foot of frontage, okay? So what the tree save allows you to do is maybe take the back part and you subdivide it off, and it'll never be built on. So those trees instead of 50 foot of frontage, they'll let you do 35 foot of frontage. So there's things like this when you look at a piece of property. Are there tree saves stuff? And here's another thing I never even talked about. Can it be rezoned? I have a friend of mine right now, partner. He bought a property for $250,000. They're rezoning it. The rezoning goes through. He should be able to sell for about $1.2 to $1.3 million. So you got to know. You got to talk to people in the city. Hey, can I rezone this? Or get that attorney that's doing the variance and rezoning. Think about it. If it goes through, he could make $1 million on one deal.
Right.
So you want to look at the rezoning. So this is some of the stuff that you need to take a quick look at every time you got a lot. Because I know with Pebble, you guys are mailing all these things out. And again, your thinking is, oh, let's just sell it. Spend 10 minutes to go through this checklist to see if there's a value add. Probably 95%, 98% of the time there won't. But occasionally, if you can just spend 10 minutes and hit a home run like this, that's just extra money by adding value. So.
Right. Yeah, no, I appreciate that. Again, we'll make this show notes available, a checklist available for people to kind of go through. And it's good to have that in front of you, especially if you're not in that mindset of doing so, and sort of taking that first step into maybe exploring, as we start accomplishing more and more properties, and you sort of get into that space where, hey, what else can I do with these properties? What else and where else can I make more profits? Now, one question I have for you is, I notice the properties you work out of are mainly infill lots. Is that correct?
Yes.
Now, could some of these also apply for, say, rural kind of vacant land?
Definitely. A lot of rural land, depending on the zoning, could be subdivided. A lot of it could be subdivided. So you could actually subdivide it into individual lots or into 2 parcels or 3 parcels. I've even seen it where part of it's zoned commercial and part of it's zoned residential. You could subdivide off the commercial and the residential. And plus, here's another thing too. There's all sorts of stuff you can do with rural lots, from RV parks to hunting to, there's just so much other value adds that you can learn for some of the rural land that you can do stuff with also. So
I love that.
And
I think it really comes down to what you said at the start, right? And then what you have here is finding ways to find a value add to the properties that you have. Essentially, that's what it's boiling down to.
Exactly.
Karl, I think you can go on and sort of share so much. And I want people to know, if they want to be able to get a hold of you or work with you or come into, I know you sort of, correct me if I'm wrong, do you also partner with other people as well? You also have a mastermind. Is that correct?
Yeah. We have a mastermind group where we teach this a little more in depth.
Yeah.
Okay. And then it's only $105 a month. And we have 4 Zoom meetings where we break it down. And then we also, we'll joint venture with people. We'll consult. And we have stuff like, we have virtual assistants at $5 an hour. That's helping us out now. We're going to have data at, I think it's like bulk skip tracing around 3 to 5 cents. So we're going to have a lot of other stuff. But I'll give you my phone number. You know, reach out to us.
Yeah, I'll get you to add that onto our show notes so everybody can just at least just tap it. We'll make it a tappable link so that if people want to directly call Uncle Karl, they can just simply tap and connect with you. Now, if they wanted to learn more about you, should they email you, or is there a group that they should visit? What's the best way other than calling?
The best way is go ahead and text me, on my phone number, and then I'll put my email too. Email me. Now, sometimes I get going a million miles per hour, so you might have to text me 2 or 3 times. I'm not ignoring you. I just gets crazy. And so I would text me, email me, and I would join the mastermind because we also have a Facebook page. We answer lots of questions.
Can you sort of briefly sum up what that what that mastermind is about? And from what I remember, you literally sort of dive in with everybody who has a property that they want to talk to you about. Is that right?
Well, mainly we have, it's me teaching this kind of stuff, but we also have different people. Like one time we had this great guy, Jesse from Pebble, that went on to show his system. So we have different people. So it's me, it's basically me breaking down the stuff most of the weeks. And then we have guests sometimes showing different stuff because I don't know everything. So we'll bring different people. So you get that in the mastermind. It's a Zoom meeting. It's supposed to be for an hour. It almost always goes for 2. and then I answer questions.
It goes
And then
quite long. Yeah.
you have the Facebook page too to
Yeah.
answer questions and share and network. And then we have all sorts of discounts on other products and stuff that we're adding.
Yeah.
So
I told Uncle Karl about this before. Karl isn't really in the land community. He sort of is, but he's still working in that, land investing area. And we also have another creative land investor by the name of Damien. And he also, is another fellow. A few of you guys that are doing really creative stuff with land, and you don't follow the typical formula, but I feel there's a lot of value add
yeah,
to a lot of land investors who want to look at how to handle things a little bit differently, especially with bigger properties, more unique properties, properties with issues on there. This is where people like Uncle Karl are sort of going in and diving deep with this kind of stuff. So,
and a couple things I wanted to add too is that we also buy partial interest. So if you find a property sometimes, and like let's say someone passed away, they email you, there might be 2 or 3 heirs, you can buy out portions of it. And there's a whole cool segment that I didn't even get a chance to talk about, buying partial ownerships too. So again, whenever there's a problem, there's probably a good solution to get creative. And what I wanted to bring to everybody in your community was, my whole thing was, I was thinking about this, like, I want to show stuff that they can add value, stuff they're already doing. They're getting these leads in, how they can maximize their leads and hopefully make more money. And that's why I put this together, because I thought this would be really good for everybody in the Pebble community and what you guys do.
I appreciate that. And then typically on this podcast, we talk more on the digital side of things. But again, recently I'm bringing in some, different people that are actively doing different things. So I appreciate you coming on, Karl, and sharing your I know you're a very passionate individual, and how much you do. You can go on and talk about all these different stuff. I would love for people to get a hold of you. We'll make sure to have your contact information on the show notes here. Karl, thank you very much for coming on the show and sharing really some of the eye-opening stuff that you're doing, and hopefully tipping off people to think differently when it comes to their property. And again, if you want to work with Karl or get into his mastermind, get help. You can do that by texting him. Well, again, we'll have that show note in the show notes. You'll be able to text him from there, and his email contact will be there. And if they just wanted to find you on Facebook, do they just type in Uncle Karl or?
Well, it's Karl Spielvogel. I should post more. It's Karl the K Spielvogel, Spielvogel. You can find me there, and that's where I do most of my posts. I really need to put them in Uncle Karl, but I don't. So, and we share these kind of deals and how we do this a little bit, but more in the mastermind. But yeah, reach out, find me on Facebook
Awesome.
too. So, well, I appreciate you having me on again. I really think you guys spend some time, learn these little things, because you're going to run across some of this stuff and go, wait a minute, Uncle Karl told me about this.
Yeah.
Hey, when you do a deal, send me a testimonial. Say, hey, I learned this from you, and send me a small royalty check too. Okay.
And you know what? For those that are listening, if there's something that you heard on this podcast episode that you want Uncle Karl to dive deeper in, feel free also to shoot us an email. Heck, I'll be happy to drag Uncle Karl back here to talk a little bit,
Love to come back,
specifically about rezoning or subdividing or variances. Maybe we'll do a deeper dive. So, Karl, once again, thank you very much for your time. I would love to have you back on the show, and we'll talk soon.
All right, thanks.
All right, cheers. Before you stop this podcast or head to the next episode, I want to personally thank you for listening to this episode of the REI Conversion Podcast. If you found this helpful, we'd greatly appreciate an awesome review and rating on whichever platform you're listening to this on. And if you have 2 minutes and wanted to step it up even more and help others, feel free to share this in other Facebook groups or pages or any communities, giving others a heads up of the REI Conversion Podcast or this specific episode that may help them on their investing journey. Once again, thanks very much for listening, and catch you on our next episode.